Raindrops and revelations. The storm arrived without warning, lashing against the windows of Dominic Winter's coastal mansion with a fury that matched his mood. Lightning split the sky as he navigated his Aston Martin up the winding private driveway, the headlights barely cutting through the torrential downpour. Another failed acquisition attempt, another day of meaningless meetings. At 39, Dominic had amassed enough wealth to last several lifetimes, yet the victory felt hollow. As his car approached the final curve before home, something unusual caught his eye. A splash of white against the darkened landscape, illuminated momentarily by a flash of lightning. He slowed the vehicle, squinting through the rain-streaked windshield. There, huddled beneath the meager shelter of an ornamental pine, was a woman. "What the hell?" Dominic muttered, bringing the car to a complete stop. She was soaked through, dark hair plastered to her face, clutching a leather portfolio to her chest like a shield. Her cream-colored designer suit, which he recognized as an exclusive piece from last season's Valentino collection, was ruined, the silk blouse underneath nearly transparent from the rain. Against his better judgment, Dominic lowered his window. "Are you lost?" The woman turned, startled by his voice. Even through the rain, he could see her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, mascara creating delicate shadows beneath them. "My car broke down half a mile back," she called over the storm's roar. "I thought I could reach the main road, but then this weather." She gestured helplessly at the sky, which responded with another crash of thunder. Dominic hesitated. For 7 years he'd maintained strict privacy, keeping the world and its complications firmly outside his gates. His security team would have his head for this breach of protocol. "Get in," he said finally, unlocking the passenger door. "Before you catch pneumonia." Relief flooded her face as she rushed to the car, sliding into the leather seat with a squelch. Up close, she was younger than he'd first thought, early 30s perhaps, with intelligent eyes and a determined set to her jaw despite her bedraggled appearance. "Thank you," she breathed, clutching the portfolio tighter. "I'm Olivia Bennett." "Dominic Winters." He watched her eyes widen slightly in recognition of his name, the reclusive tech billionaire whose face rarely appeared in the press. "What brings you to my private road, Miss Bennett?" She straightened, summoning dignity despite her appearance. "I had a meeting at Coastline Properties about leasing space for my design studio. Their GPS directions led me through this back road. When my car died, I tried calling for help, but there's no reception." Dominic studied her as he restarted the car. The portfolio bore the embossed logo of Bennett Designs, a small but respected fashion house that had been making waves in sustainable couture. "You're that Bennett," he remarked, putting the car in drive. "Your winter collection generated quite a buzz." Surprise flickered across her face. "You follow fashion." "I follow innovation," he corrected, navigating toward his house. "Your use of recycled materials caught my attention. Clever engineering." They pulled up to the mansion, a modernist structure of glass and stone perched on the cliffside. As they hurried inside, his housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, appeared with towels, her eyebrows rising nearly to her hairline at the sight of a guest. "Run a hot bath in the blue suite," Dominic instructed, handing Olivia a towel, "and find some dry clothes." "That's really not necessary," Olivia began, but was interrupted by a violent sneeze. "Apparently it is," he said dryly. "Mrs. Abernathy will show you upstairs. We'll call a tow truck once the storm passes." As Olivia followed the housekeeper, Dominic noticed her casting a lingering glance at the framed photograph on his desk, himself beside Thomas, his former business partner, at the launch of their first successful software platform, before everything fell apart. Later, wrapped in borrowed clothes too large for her frame, Olivia joined him in the study where he sat reviewing quarterly reports. The rain continued its assault outside, but inside, the fireplace cast a warm glow across the room. "Your home is beautiful," she offered, settling into a leather armchair, "though I imagine it gets lonely out here." "Solitude is underrated," he replied, without looking up. "The tow truck can't come until morning. You're welcome to stay in the guest suite." Olivia studied him, this man whose technological innovations had revolutionized security systems worldwide, yet who seemed to have locked himself away from life entirely. "Thank you for your kindness," she said softly. "Not everyone would help a stranger." Dominic finally looked up, meeting her gaze. "Why do I get the feeling you're running from something, Ms. Bennett?" The question hung between them, unexpected and perceptive. Outside, lightning illuminated the room, casting sharp shadows across her face as she tensed. "Perhaps," she admitted after a moment, "I'm running toward something instead." Before he could respond, his phone rang. The screen displayed a name that made his jaw tighten. Harrison Pierce, CEO of Pierce Enterprises and the man whose ruthless business practices had nearly destroyed Dominic's company years ago. He declined the call, but not before Olivia caught sight of the name. The color drained from her face, her knuckles whitening around the portfolio in her lap. "You know Pierce?" Dominic asked. Suddenly alert, Olivia's eyes met his, vulnerability and determination warring in her expression. "He's the reason my car broke down on your road. The reason I left my own launch party early." She took a steadying breath. "And the reason I might lose everything I've worked for." Outside, The storm raged on, but inside Dominic's carefully ordered world, though something fundamental had shifted with the arrival of this woman and whatever secrets she carried with her through the rain. Walls of glass morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dominic's guest suite, gently waking Olivia from a fitful sleep. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. The Egyptian cotton sheets and panoramic ocean view were a far cry from her modest apartment above her struggling design studio in the city. The events of the previous night came rushing back. The disastrous confrontation with Harrison at her launch party, the desperate drive to escape, and then finding unexpected sanctuary with Dominic Winters, a man whose reputation for brilliance was matched only by rumors of his A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Bennet, there's breakfast downstairs when you're ready," Mrs. Abernathy called. "And Mr. Winters asked me to inform you that the mechanic has arrived to look at your car." Olivia quickly, dressed in her now dry clothes from yesterday, smoothing the wrinkles as best she could. The portfolio containing her original designs, the ones Harrison had threatened to claim as his company's intellectual property, remained safely tucked under the mattress, where she'd hidden it before sleep. Downstairs she found Dominic in the kitchen, casually dressed in a grey Henley and dark jeans that softened his imposing presence. He stood by the expansive windows, coffee in hand, gazing out at the ocean. The morning light revealed details she'd missed in the darkness, the slight silver at his temples, the faint lines around his eyes that spoke of stress rather than laughter. "You look better," he observed, turning as she entered. "Coffee, please." She accepted the mug he offered, warming her hands around it. "About last night, the mechanic says your alternator is fried," he interrupted, clearly avoiding the topic of Harrison Pierce. "It'll take a few days to get the part." Olivia's heart sank. "I can't impose on you for days. I'll call a ride share to where exactly?" His piercing gaze met hers. "Back to the city where Pierce is looking for you." She set her mug down with a sharp clink. "How did you know that?" Dominic sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Harrison Pierce doesn't make personal calls to me unless it matters. After you fell asleep, he called 3 more times. The final message mentioned a runaway designer who'd stolen proprietary designs." "That's a lie," Olivia said, her voice rising. "Those designs are mine. Every sketch, every pattern. I created them before I ever signed with Pierce Fashions as a manufacturing partner." Dominic studied her for a long moment. "I believe you." His simple statement momentarily robbed her of speech. "You do just like that?" A bitter smile crossed his face as he turned back to the window. 7 years ago, Pierce nearly destroyed everything I built. He has a pattern of finding talented people, gaining their trust, then legally maneuvering to own their work." The pieces clicked into place. "The scandal with Sentinel Security Systems, that was Pierce." Dominic's shoulders tensed visibly. "My business partner, Thomas Reed, trusted Pierce with prototype information during acquisition talks. 2 weeks later, Pierce's tech division announced a breakthrough with remarkable similarities to our work." His voice grew quiet. "Thomas couldn't handle the betrayal or the legal battles that followed. He took his own life 3 months later." The weight of his words hung in the silence between them. Olivia now understood the significance of the photograph she'd noticed last night and why Dominic had retreated from the world to this beautiful but isolated fortress. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. He turned, his expression guarded once more. "The guest house is yours until your car is repaired. It's private, with its own entrance. You'll be safe here while you figure out your next move." Before she could thank him, Dominic's phone rang. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. "I need to take this. Make yourself at home." As he left, Olivia wandered through the main house, struck by its contradictions. The architecture was stunning walls of glass designed to embrace the breathtaking coastal views, yet the interior felt unlived in, more showcase than home. No personal touches, no photographs beyond the one with Thomas. No evidence that Dominic did anything here but worked out in the afternoon. She settled into the guest house with her portfolio and the clothes Mrs. Abernathy had provided. The space was beautifully appointed but similarly impersonal. On impulse, she gathered wildflowers from the garden and placed them in a water glass on the coffee table, a small act of rebellion against the pervasive emptiness. Later, she discovered a small design studio tucked away on the property's north side, equipped with a sewing machine and drafting table. Mrs. Abernathy explained that Dominic's late mother had been an amateur designer, and the room had remained untouched since her passing. "May I use it?" Olivia asked, fingers already itching to create. In design, she had always found clarity. "I don't see why not," Mrs. Abernathy replied with a rare smile. "It's about time someone brought life back to that space." For 3 days, Olivia worked feverishly in the studio, redefining her collection away from Pierce's influence. She barely saw Dominic, who seemed deliberately to keep his distance. On the 4th evening, she was sketching on the guesthouse patio when his tall figure appeared on the path. "Your car will be ready tomorrow," he said without preamble. "Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "I've been using your mother's studio. I hope that's okay." Something flickered in his eye, surprise, perhaps nostalgia. "You found that?" "Mrs. Abernathy showed me. It's a beautiful space." He nodded, turning to leave. But Olivia stood, determined to breach the wall he maintained. "Would you like to see what I've been working on?" Dominic paused, seeming to debate internally, before answering why. Because you understand what it's like to have someone try to steal your creation, she said simply. And because I value your opinion. Their eyes met, a silent assessment passing between them. Finally, he nodded. In the studio, Olivia showed him her revised designs, a collection that blended sustainable materials with classic silhouettes, each piece telling part of a story. To her surprise, Dominic asked insightful questions about her construction techniques and material choices. These are exceptional, he admitted, examining a sketch of a jacket with an innovative closure system. Pierce is a fool if he thinks he can replicate your vision. Yet he has the resources to try, she sighed. My family's small factory can't compete with his manufacturing empire. Dominic studied her thoughtfully. What if you had a different kind of partner, one who respected your autonomy? Those don't exactly grow on trees in the fashion industry, she said, with a rueful smile. Perhaps you've been looking in the wrong industry. There was something in his tone that made her heart beat faster. Technology and fashion are more compatible than most realize. As night fell, they moved to the main house's terrace, under a canopy of stars, with the sound of waves crashing below. Dominic gradually shared more about his life, his childhood fascination with coding, the meteoric rise of his security company, and the hollow victory of his eventual settlement with PS Enterprises. In turn, Olivia told him about growing up in her family's small custom tailoring shop, her struggle to honor tradition while pushing boundaries, and how Pierce had initially seemed like the answer to her financial challenges. He offered to invest in Bennett Designs, but the contract gave him rights to anything created during our partnership, she explained. When I realized what I'd signed, I tried to back out, but he threatened to back up my parents' business. Dominic's expression darkened. Classic Pierce. Yesterday was supposed to be the official merger announcement, she continued. I couldn't go through with it. I grabbed my original portfolio and ran. Brave, he murmured, his eyes reflecting the starlight. Olivia laughed softly. Or foolish. I have no legal resources to fight him, no capital to restart independently. Everyone needs allies, Olivia, Dominic said, using her first name for the first time. The sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her, even those of us who prefer solitude. As their conversation continued into the night, the walls both had built began to show their first cracks. In this man whose life had been defined by betrayal, Olivia sensed a kindred spirit, someone who understood the vulnerability of creation and the pain of having it threatened. And in this woman whose determination matched his own, Dominic recognized something he'd long forgotten. The possibility that not all connections led to loss. Neither mentioned the car that would be ready tomorrow, nor what would happen when the temporary sanctuary of these glass walls was no longer an option. Unexpected threads. The morning Olivia's car was to be returned, Dominic found himself standing in his home office, gazing out at the guest house where a light still burned despite the early hour. For nearly a week, his carefully constructed solitude had been disrupted by her presence. Yet instead of the intrusion he'd expected, he felt an unfamiliar lightness. His phone vibrated on the desk, a message from his investigator with information on Harrison Pierce's recent business dealings. What had begun as idle curiosity following Olivia's arrival had evolved into a meticulous investigation. The preliminary findings troubled him, a pattern of intellectual property theft masked by carefully worded contracts, primarily targeting small design houses with limited legal resources. The sound of the studio door closing drew his attention. Olivia walked across the garden, portfolio tucked under her arm, hair catching the morning light. She moved with purpose, unaware of his observation. In just days, she had transformed his mother's abandoned studio from a shrine to the past into a vibrant workspace. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Winters, the mechanic has arrived with Ms. Bennett's vehicle, Mrs. Abernathy announced. I'll be right down, he replied, surprised by his reluctance. Outside, Olivia was already inspecting her repaired car, thanking the mechanic with genuine warmth that made the gruff man smile. She turned as Dominic approached, her expression conflicted. Good as new, she said, patting the hood of her modest sedan, a stark contrast to his collection of luxury vehicles. Good. The word came out more curtly than he'd intended. He cleared his throat. Have you decided where you'll go? She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture he'd come to recognize as a sign of her uncertainty. Back to the city, I suppose. I need to check on my parents and the shop. Pierce has been calling them, making threats. Decision crystallized in Dominic's mind. Don't go. Surprise flashed across her face. What? I've been investigating Pierce, he admitted. There's more at stake than just your designs. I believe he's been systematically targeting independent creators across multiple industries. Olivia's eyes widened. You've been investigating. Why? Dominic looked away, uncomfortable with his own motivations. Consider it a long overdue reckoning. That doesn't explain why I should stay. You need a safe place to work while we gather evidence, he said, adopting a more pragmatic tone. And I have resources that can help protect your parents' business in the meantime. She studied him, as if searching for the unspoken. Why would you do this for me? The question hung between them, deceptively simple yet laden with complexity. The truth was, he wasn't entirely sure himself. Revenge against Pierce. professional respect for her talent, or something more personal that he wasn't ready to acknowledge. Because 7 years ago, no one stood with me and Thomas, he finally said, and because your work deserves to exist on its own terms. After a moment's consideration, Olivia nodded. I'll stay on one condition. Name it. This can't just be about your vendetta against Pierce, she said firmly. I need to know you see my designs as more than weapons in your war. Her perceptiveness was unsettling. I respect your work independently of Pierce, he assured her. In fact, I have a proposition that might interest you. Over breakfast on the terrace, Dominic outlined his idea, a limited collaboration between Bennett Designs and Winters Technology, incorporating her sustainable textiles with his company's innovations in wearable technology. Imagine fabrics that adapt to environmental conditions, or accessories that integrate seamlessly with digital interfaces, he explained, his usual reserve giving way to enthusiasm. Your aesthetic vision combined with our technical capabilities. Olivia leaned forward, equally animated, like a jacket with thermoregulating properties based on your building management systems. Exactly, something Pierce couldn't replicate because he lacks either the technology or the design sensibility. It's brilliant, she admitted, then hesitated. But wouldn't a formal partnership complicate things? I just escaped one uneven business relationship. Dominic met her gaze directly. Full creative control remains with you. My company provides technical support, manufacturing resources, and distribution channels, equal profit sharing, separate intellectual property rights, everything in writing, reviewed by your own attorney. The wariness in her eyes softened. You've given this serious thought. I've had nothing but time to think in recent years, he said with a self-deprecating smile. That afternoon, Olivia called her parents from Dominic's secure line, reassuring them while explaining her extended absence. To her relief, Dominic's legal team had already reached out, offering protection against Pierce's intimidation tactics. As days turned into weeks, a rhythm developed between them. Mornings found Dominic in his office, managing his tech empire remotely while gathering evidence against Pierce. Afternoons often brought him to the studio, where Olivia's creative process fascinated him the way she lost herself in the flow of creation, draping fabrics and adjusting patterns with an intuitive precision. For her part, Olivia began to see beyond Dominic's carefully maintained facade. His analytical mind complemented her creative instincts, offering solutions to design challenges she hadn't considered. More surprising was his dry humor that emerged in unguarded moments, and the gentle way he listened, truly listened when she spoke about her dreams for Bennett Designs. The house itself seemed to respond to her presence. Fresh flowers appeared in rooms previously left bare. Music occasionally drifted through spaces long accustomed to silence. Mrs. Abernathy no longer startled at the sound of laughter. One evening, after a productive design session, they shared dinner on the terrace. The conversation flowed easily until Dominic's phone rang with a call from his lead investigator. We've found something, he said upon returning. Financial records linking Pierce to a factory in Malaysia that's been producing counterfeit versions of designs from multiple independent labels including early Bennett pieces. Olivia paled. He's been stealing from me for longer than I realized. Not just you. There are at least 7 other designers involved, all with similar contracts to what he offered you. Dominic hesitated. We also found something concerning your father's business. Loan evidence suggesting Pierce may have deliberately engineered the financial difficulties that made you vulnerable to his offer. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her glass. So my family's struggle, my decision to partner with him, none of it was coincidence. I'm sorry, Olivia. She stood abruptly. I need some air. Dominic watched as she made her way down the path leading to the cliffside viewing point. After giving her time alone, he followed, finding her seated on the stone bench overlooking the ocean. My whole career, I've worried that I wasn't good enough, she said without turning, that my designs weren't special enough to succeed on their own merit. To learn that someone valued them enough to steal them, it's a strange validation. He sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. Your work is exceptional. Pierce recognized that, even if his response was to exploit rather than support. She finally looked at him, moonlight silvering her profile. What happens now? We've accumulated enough evidence for a solid legal case, he explained. Multiple counts of intellectual property theft, fraud, market manipulation. With the other designers as co-plaintiffs, Pierce won't be able to bury this or settle quietly in our collaboration, she asked softly. The prototype samples are ready for testing. His voice grew warmer. Your integration of the thermal technology is remarkable, better than my engineers initially thought. Possible. A comfortable silence settled between them as they gazed out at the moonlit ocean. I never thanked you properly, Olivia said eventually. Not just for the protection or the partnership, but for believing me when I showed up soaking wet on your property with a wild story about stolen designs. You were convincing, he offered with a slight smile. Even drenched, she laughed, the sound carrying on the night breeze. Still, you could have called security. Instead, you offered sanctuary to a stranger. Perhaps I recognized something familiar, Dominic admitted, surprising himself with his candor. Someone else whose creation had been threatened. Or perhaps, double quotes, perhaps what, she prompted when he didn't continue. He turned to face her fully, struck by how quickly this woman had become important to him. Perhaps after years of hiding behind walls of glass, watching life happen at a distance, I was finally ready to open a door. The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Olivia's gaze held his, searching for something she seemed to find. Slowly, deliberately, she closed the distance between them, her hand coming to rest gently against his. Doors, once opened, can't be closed again, she whispered. I'm counting on that, he replied, his fingers tentatively interlacing with hers. As the ocean crashed against the cliffs below, something shifted irrevocably between them, a connection neither had sought but both now recognized as essential, woven like an unexpected thread into the fabric of their separate stories. The pattern revealed the headquarters of Pierce Enterprises rose like a glass monolith above the city skyline, its reflective surface capturing clouds and sunlight in equal measure. From the back of Dominic's town car, Olivia studied the building with a mix of apprehension and resolve. Are you certain you want to be present for this? Dominic asked, his hand resting protectively near hers on the leather seat. The lawyers could handle the formal filing. I need to see his face, Olivia replied, straightening the lapel of her jacket, one of her own designs, enhanced with Dominic's technology. 7 other designers are counting on me as the lead plaintiff. The past month had transformed their initial collaboration into something more comprehensive. With Dominic's resources, they had located other victims of Pierce's intellectual property theft and built an airtight case. The formal complaint would be filed today, accompanied by a cease and desist order for all Bennett design knockoffs. As they entered the building's imposing lobby, Olivia felt rather than saw the security guards take notice of Dominic. His reputation preceded him. It had been years since Dominic Winters had appeared at a competitor's headquarters. Harrison Pierce was waiting in the conference room, his trademark smile faltering slightly at the sight of Dominic beside Olivia. At 55, Pierce maintained the polished appearance of a man accustomed to power, silver hair, perfectly styled Italian suit impeccably tailored. Olivia, darling, he greeted with manufactured warmth. I've been concerned about your extended absence. And Dominic Winters, what an unexpected pleasure. Save the performance, Harrison, Dominic replied coldly. We're here with Ms. Bennett's attorneys to address your systematic theft of her intellectual property. Pierce's smile hardened. Strong accusations from a man who hasn't released a truly innovative product in years. As for Ms. Bennett's claims, he spread his hands diplomatically. Creative inspiration is a complex matter. Our designs merely follow similar market trends. Olivia stepped forward, placing her portfolio on the table. These aren't about market trends. These are my original sketches, dated and notarized before I ever met you. She pulled out another set of documents. And these are photographs of counterfeit Bennett designs being produced in your Malaysian factory 2 years before our partnership discussions. The color drained from Pierce's face as Dominic added, we have similar evidence from 7 other designers. The formal complaint names them all as co-plaintiffs. You're bluffing, Pierce hissed, his facade cracking. We've also discovered interesting connections between you and the bank that pressured Olivia's family business. Dominic continued, his voice dangerously calm. The Justice Department is particularly interested in those financial manipulations. Pierce's attorney whispered urgently in his ear, but he waved the man away. This is personal, isn't it? Winters, still bitter about Thomas Reed. He was weak, he didn't have what it took to survive in this business. Dominic took a step forward, fury flashing in his eyes before Olivia's hand on his arm steadied him. This isn't about the past, she said firmly. It's about stopping you from destroying more careers. She turned to Pierce's attorney. You have 24 hours to respond to our filing before we go public with everything. As they turned to leave, Pierce called out, you think you've won? This will take years to litigate. By then, Bennett Designs will be a footnote in fashion history. Olivia paused at the door. Actually, our first collaborative collection launches next week. Perhaps you've heard the buzz. Adaptive couture where Bennett Designs meets Winters technology. She smiled. Advance orders have already exceeded projections. Pierce's expression confirmed their impact as they departed, leaving his attorneys scrambling with the substantial legal documents in the elevator. Dominic released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding when he mentioned Thomas. I know, Olivia said quietly, but this victory isn't about revenge, it's about justice. As the elevator descended, he studied her profile. You were magnificent in there. She turned to him with a half smile. We both were. Back at the mansion that evening, they celebrated with champagne on the terrace, a small moment of triumph before the legal battle truly began. The collection launch preparations were entering their final phase, with Olivia's designs and Dominic's technology seamlessly integrated. To new beginnings, Dominic toasted, the evening light softening his features. And unexpected partnerships, Olivia added, her eyes meeting his over her glass. The charged moment was interrupted by Mrs. Abernathy announcing dinner. Throughout the meal, their conversation drifted between business matters and more personal territories, his childhood interest in coding, Her grandmother, who first taught her to sew, shared memories of favorite cities later. As they walked along the cliffside path, illuminated by landscape lighting, Dominic found himself contemplating how quickly Olivia had become essential to his daily life. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. "What happens after the launch?" he asked suddenly. "Will you return to the city?" Olivia slowed her pace, considering, "My parents' shop is there, and I've missed them." But truthfully, she hesitated. "This place has become more home to me in weeks than my apartment has been in years." Something expanded in Dominic's chest. Hope, perhaps, or possibility. "The guest house is yours for as long as you want it." "And what about us, Dominic?" she asked directly. "This collaboration, these weeks together, they've become more than either of us expected, haven't they?" The vulnerability in her question demanded honesty. "After Thomas died, I convinced myself that isolation was safer than connection. These walls of glass were meant to keep the world at a distance." He took her hand carefully. "Then you arrived, and suddenly the same walls began to feel like barriers rather than protection." Olivia stepped closer. "Are you ready to lower those barriers?" Instead of answering with words, Dominic closed the remaining distance between them. His kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as she responded with equal fervor. Against the backdrop of crashing waves, they embraced as equals, to creators who had found in each other not just professional respect but profound personal connection. Redesigning destiny. The exhibition hall hummed with anticipation as Manhattan's fashion elite gathered for the launch of adaptive couture. Spotlights illuminated models wearing Olivia's revolutionary designs, each garment showcasing the seamless integration of winter's technology fabrics that adjusted to environmental conditions, accessories that connected discreetly to digital interfaces, evening wear with subtle illumination responding to music's tempo. From backstage, Olivia watched the audience's reaction with nervous excitement. Fashion critics who had written off Bennett designs months ago now leaned forward in their seats, capturing images and notes with undisguised interest. "They're captivated," Dominic observed, appearing beside her in a tailored charcoal suit. The past 3 months had softened him. The perpetual tension in his shoulders had eased. His smile came more readily. "We did it," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "Bennett Winter's technology actually works." As the final model completed her walk, applause erupted across the hall. Olivia stepped onto the runway for her designer bow, pulling Dominic unexpectedly along with her. The crowd's response intensified, not just for the innovative collection but for the partnership it represented. At the reception afterward, they navigated congratulations from industry figures and technology innovators alike. The 7 other designers who had joined their legal action against Pierce were in attendance, each wearing custom pieces from the collection as a show of solidarity. Harrison Pierce's stock dropped 12% today, one of the designers informed them gleefully. "The board has called an emergency meeting." "That's just the beginning," Dominic replied. "The formal investigation into his business practices starts next week." Later that evening, they escaped to the rooftop garden of Dominic's Manhattan apartment, a space that, like his coastal home, had been transformed by Olivia's touch. Potted plants softened the geometric architecture, while textiles in rich jewel tones created intimate seating areas. "I have something for you," Dominic said, producing a small box from his pocket. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "If that's what I think it is, you should know I'm not easily impressed by traditional gestures." He chuckled, opening the box to reveal not a ring but a key. "It's to the main house, not just the guest house. I'm not asking you to marry me at least not yet. I'm asking if you're ready to fully combine our lives, not just our businesses." She took the key, turning it over thoughtfully. "The woman who crashed into your life during a rainstorm, moving into the fortress you built to keep everyone out. That's quite a story." "It's our story," he said simply. "The one that began the night you chose to run toward your future instead of surrendering to Pierce's demands." Olivia stepped closer, her hand coming to rest against his chest. "Who would have thought my car breaking down would lead to all this? A successful collection, justice for multiple designers, and ... double quotes." She smiled up at him. "Finding someone who understands both the creator and the creation." "Some might call it destiny," Dominic suggested, his arms encircling her waist. "I call it the best detour I ever took," she replied before drawing him into a kiss that promised many more collaborations to come. 6 months later, as spring bloomed across the coastal property, Dominic stood in his home office watching workers construct an expanded design studio adjacent to the main house. The legal proceedings against Pierce continued, but the man's influence had been irreparably damaged. 3 board members had resigned, and criminal investigations were underway in multiple jurisdictions. The sound of Olivia's laughter drew him outside, where she was directing the placement of her grandmother's antique sewing table near the windows, offering the best natural light. "Is this what you imagined when you offered me sanctuary that first night?" she asked as he approached. Dominic shook his head, smiling. "Not remotely. I thought you'd stay a few days at most, and now I can't imagine these spaces without you in them," he admitted, taking her hand. "The designs we create together, The life we're building, it's beyond anything I would have dared to hope for after losing Thomas." Olivia's expression softened. "He would be proud of you, not just for bringing Pierce to justice, but for opening yourself to possibilities again." In the distance, the ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, constant yet ever-changing. Much like the journey they had begun together, what had started as a chance encounter in a rainstorm had evolved into a partnership of equals, each bringing their unique strengths to create something neither could have achieved alone. As they walked hand in hand toward the newly expanded studio, Dominic reflected that some of life's most profound designs weren't sketched on paper or coded into software, but woven through the unexpected connections that transformed isolation into belonging, and strangers into essential parts of each other's stories. That night, under a canopy of stars, he finally asked the question the key had only hinted at months before, and as Olivia answered with an emphatic yes, both knew they were embarking on their most ambitious collaboration, yet a shared future neither had planned but both had helped design, one careful stitch at a time.